All right, welcome to the St. Matthew training video. Today we're going to be looking at the big master mixer board here in the booth. I'm going to take you through a column and explain how the signal flows. We're going to start at the top where the mic inputs come in, and we're going to look at channel number 23. Channel 23, we're going to go down the list. Go down the row here. The microphone input, the first button is the 48 volts, and that's also called phantom power. Some microphones, the condenser microphones, the choir mics, the guitar mic, they need a little bit of power to operate the mic, so you can turn that on there. The next gray button is the inversion. You can invert the signal sometimes if something's wired wrong. We don't ever use that button. Next one is the gain, and that changes the gain on the signal, the strength, how strong the signal comes in. Next button is the low frequency cutoff, and we usually do that for all speaking and speaking and vocal mics. Anything that's with instruments, we keep that open because we want to hear the bass. The next section is the equalizer. You have your high-pitched all the way down to your low-pitched. And then in the middle section is the mid-range. They have two mid-range. The white button determines the frequency, and the black button determines the level of that frequency. Next button is whether the EQ is on or off, and we always have that pushed in as being on. The next section of buttons are the different aux sends. There's the green, blue, white, and black. Currently, St. Matthew uses the two green aux sends for the two monitor mixes. So it takes the signal, the sound that comes in, and then it sends it off to monitors, monitor 1 or monitor 2. The next section is the blue buttons. The top blue button is for the delay send that's built in to the system, which we don't use. The next one is the delay system that Dave Trico set up one time, which we don't use either. The white buttons, the first row of white buttons, is the record aux send, and that one we use all the time. So if we want pastor to be louder, we turn them up. If we want them softer, we turn them quieter. Then the remaining aux sends we don't use. The yellow button is the balance for left and right, but we don't have a stereo system. It's a mono system, so we just leave that in the center. Next is the slider section. And we have the mute button that mutes the channel. And then this is the assign what set of speakers you're assigning this channel to, and usually it's always the center. We have the center system. We don't have a right and left stereo system. But these correspond to these sliders over here. The center, when the center button is pushed, it sends it right to the center, the master volume control on the system. When the left and right is pushed, it sends it to the left and right faders. And when either 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, here's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, that's there. Below, then you have your meter. Below the meter, you have your mute groups, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can assign it to which mute group it is. And then above the main center fader are the mute groups here. You can see mute group 1 and mute group 2 are turned on right now, and mute group 3 and 4 are off. After the mute group comes the PFL button, and that sends the signal directly to the headphones, so you can hear what that sounds like. Now we're going to take a look at this channel next to it, channel 24, which is my microphone right now, and you can see that the meter level is indicated there about how strong my voice signal is to the system. And what you want to do is probably have it between 0 and 10 or 0 and 8s, and you can see that my voice is just barely showing up there. So we want to increase that. So we're going to go up to the gain and increase the gain. And increasing the gain will increase the signal and make it louder. Then as we're recording for church, the recording aux vent here will send how much of that signal strength gets sent into the record mix. And then if we want to change the frequencies of how I sound, you can change it here. Now these are all pretty much set the same, and it's optimized for the room of the church and the sound, so that the sound coming out of the speakers is the same as if you were standing face to face with someone talking. That's the goal. All right, so we've talked about one channel and how that all works. Then next to those are specialized channels for stereo, 1 and 2. And we use those. The first one we use for the keyboard that's up in the balcony. And stereo channel 2 we use for the congregational mic. The reason why we use those two stereo channels for those two things is because we don't have a stereo system, so we don't really need it. And we don't really need the equalizer control on those two things like we do for the vocals or instrumentals. So since they're the least used channels, we gave them the ones that don't need as much control. But basically they work the same way. They have gains, they have equalizers. You can't change the frequencies, but you can change the level. They have aux ends, and then they have the faders. For the congregational mic, we do not want it assigned to the center speaker because we don't want the congregation to hear itself, and that would also create a feedback. Like right now it's muted so that you don't hear me in a big echo. So if I take that off, and you now you'll be able to hear me and the big echo of the room. So during the service, when pastor speaks, we always keep that muted or turned almost all the way down. One thing that I've noticed in recording is that if you mute it on and off, there's a very abrupt change in the sound. But if you use the fader to turn it on and off, it's very gradual and easier on the ear. The next section of the board is the more complicated section. Okay, we're going to look at the main section of the board here that has the more challenging controls. This top part has to do with groups and mixing the groups, and we don't use groups or mixing them, so they're all just turned off. The next section, this row here, has to do with the master mixing of those groups, which we're not using. Now this section here, these buttons, these knobs correspond to these aux ends. So for example, this is the total level of all of the aux ends from aux 5. So here's all of aux 5. You add them all up, and so this is like the master control level of aux 5. So while you can do the individual of my mic, either increasing it or decreasing it on the recording, this master one will do all of them that are assigned to aux 5. We'll get that effect. So that's those. And you see right now that aux 5 is sent, the AFL is on, so that means it goes right into the headphones. Here is, let's go down here, this is panning for those different groups, but we don't use that, so that just stays center. Here is the record alternate output level, which we don't use. Talkback, you can have a talkback mic, but we don't use that. Stereo return, we don't use. Here's the headphone volume that we use. So when you have like aux 5 on and you're listening to it in the headphones, you can make the headphones be louder or softer. This is the master volume control for the system, and the right and left volume control. Dave Trikel likes to have the right and left channels, these yellow sliders, be used for either the CD or DVD volume control, and then these sliders here for groups 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 would be for, like, he puts all the vocals on either 1 or 2 and all the instrumentals on 3 or 4. So that way he can fade out an entire group of singers or an entire group of instruments rather than trying to move all of them at once. Next to the the middle section of the board are channels 25 and 26, and those are the left and right channels that come off the mixer underneath for all the AV equipment. So the computer inputs, the DVD player, the CD player, the cassette player all come in to these right and left channels. After that, we have wireless mic number 4, which is an extra wireless mic with the portable unit that we sometimes use for guests or members giving presentations after service. Next channel is Dave's Space Echo. Next channel is our own talkback mic that we plug into the board. Next is the delay channel from the delay that was built into the system, which we don't use because Dave doesn't like it, because it sounds too computerized and choppy. And the last 2 channels are Pew 1 and Pew 2. So in the front, underneath, the pews are 2 microphone jacks, one on the left and one on the right, and we call those Pew 1 and Pew 2. Going back on the rest of the board, all the other channels are identical for how they operate, and they're just the various mic inputs throughout the chapel, and they're all marked at the jack with a number, and that number corresponds to this number on the board. This concludes the overall view of the big soundboard in the AV booth.